pleasure to be in front of a group of people that are eager to hear about some of the things that are going on in Georgia. So thank you so much for having me. Um, so I have been asked to talk about the role of technology in workforce development. And the reason that I love this topic is because it combines two of the things that I really love, which is technology, because I work with a lot of tech companies, and workforce development, because I think those two things are the great equalizers to create generational wealth, both for me and for my community. So I love the topic. So the future of workforce development is exciting. It's exciting to hear about the topic and to tell you more about the topic and some of the things that we're doing here in the state of Georgia. But as I always tell my tech companies and labor companies that I talk to, technology is a tool. Just like money is a tool, it is not the end goal. There is still very much a need for the emotional side and what it is that human beings bring to the workforce. So technology is a tool. It is a great tool if you know how to use it. And so I want to tell you a little bit more about what the state of Georgia is doing. But really what I want to leave you with today is to encourage you all to make workforce development something that you personally do to grow both in your respective careers, or if you decide to become an entrepreneur, what workforce development personally should become a part of something that you do every day. So I'll give you some background about that after I speak a little bit more about what the state of Georgia is doing and some initiatives that I'm working on. So two things I want to talk about is direct workforce development. A lot of ways that the state of Georgia incentivizes workforce development is through tax credits. It's not federal tax credits, but it's Georgia tax credits. So when you fill out your Department of Revenue and your tax filings for each year, there will be at the end an opportunity for you to claim certain tax credits. One of the tax credits that I'm proud to be working on in a bipartisan manner is a workforce tax credit for rural counties. Now, it's a long story about how we got to rural counties, but there is a concentration in the state of really improving our workforce development in our rural counties outside the 10 metro areas, because that's where the greatest need is. And so there is a pending bipartisan bill to give a $4,000 tax credit to those that live in rural counties if they go through a certification program, up to $4,000 a year for 3 years. That's an incredible way to incentivize not only rural businesses, but also people who are in rural counties to get into these high-tech work jobs. So the credit does focus on high-tech jobs as far as the tax credit, but my goal is to hopefully extend that to everyone, because as we talk about technology changing, really making sure that people are up to date and retooled and have those incentives to continue to keep learning is one of the things that's vitally important to me. The other thing is artificial intelligence. So we've heard about artificial intelligence, and some people like it, some people hate it. But again, remember, it's just a tool. So artificial intelligence is one of the things that the chairman of my committee has specifically been working on as a member of the Technology and Infrastructure Committee. And this past year, I was lucky enough to get appointed to the AI subcommittee. So we have a AI bill that's currently passed the House. It deals narrowly with elections, so not specifically workforce development, but I ask you all to stay tuned because a bigger artificial intelligence bill will be coming down the pipeline probably next year that's really going to deal with the way that that different industries use AI. So it'll be very interesting. So that is that. So the other thing that I wanted to mention, particularly that the state is doing, and when I say the state, that means me in my official capacity, is I do a lot of work around connecting technology founders with partners and talent, because we're not an island. We can't do any of this stuff, the things that we need to do as founders alone. And so my role is to connect tech founders all over the state of Georgia. For the past 5 years, I've done a technology policy conference with the mayor of Atlanta, who's big into technology. This year, we're doing something different. So tomorrow, we're having a tech demo day at the Capitol where we're going to feature 10 Black founders in the south wing of the Capitol, and we'll have some other technology organizations that can provide support services there. But that really is about making sure that these tech companies are able to grow, because when tech companies grow, what do? They employ other people. And so that is really sort of a part of what I try to do in terms of connecting the workforce with our employers that we have here in the state of Georgia. And we have a bustling technology system here in the state of Georgia. So that is what's going on the sort of workforce development side from the state. And now I want to talk a little bit more about the work specifically that I do for my day job. So for those of you that don't know, the legislature is a part-time position. So even though I'm in my 7th term, I've been practicing law for 17 years. And so I have a full-blown law firm, as you can probably see by all the files and stuff that are behind me. I tried to hide it, I couldn't. So those are my law firm files that I'm working on today. We're out of session, so I'm a full-time lawyer for today. But my firm really believes in generational wealth. And one of those ways to generational wealth, I believe, is entrepreneurship. And many people, when they think about entrepreneurship, they think about quitting their day job. And that's not what entrepreneurship really is, if you think about it. It is about somebody having a side business. It is about somebody having something that they can pass on to next generations. And so one of the jobs that I see is my life purpose, both from a legislative and a professional standpoint, is to create as many millionaires as possible through entrepreneurship. And so my law firm and investment advisory firm is one of the ways that we do that. So we have a few things that we do, not only to create strong employers, who again employ people. We have coaching programs and things like that, but we also inspire people, particularly people who are looking to advance in their careers. So for those of you that are on the call that are looking to advance in your careers, we see us as a catalyst to help you do that from a personal and financial standpoint. So for those of you that follow me on social media, you will note that I have a morning motivation that I try to give out every morning to motivate people to be their best self, right? So even though you're not an entrepreneur, and Lord knows that entrepreneurs go through many trials and tribulations, even if you're in a corporate setting, all of us need motivation. And so I try to give that with my early morning posts. I get up at 4 a.m. every morning, but I usually post around 5:30. So if you want to follow me on social media, I try to give nuggets of inspiration and wisdom to really kickstart your day. But that's a part of what I want to talk about next, which is personal development and your personal workforce development. So many people think about workforce development and they think about working for someone else. But I am a big believer that we all are responsible for our own workforce development. You can't leave it to the government. You can't leave it to your employer. You have to come up with your own personal workforce development so that you can advance in your career, so that you can advance with the different goals that you have for your life. So I want to give you sort of 3 things to take away, and then I can stop for questions here. So one of my favorite Japanese words is kaizen, and I might be pronouncing that wrong, but it's Kaizen, and essentially it is a Japanese principle that says never stop learning. I was born to 2 parents who had a high school diploma, but neither one of my grandparents, my 4 grandparents, ever completed a high school diploma. And so my mom knew that education was going to be the great equalizer. She said, never stop learning. She limited me to 1 hour of TV a day, and she made sure that I was going to go to college. Now, I don't think she quite thought that I would keep going and get 4 degrees. I think she thought I would just get one. But I tell her it's her fault. She taught me to never stop learning. And so I want to give you 3 things so that you can create your own personal workforce development. And if you do this, I promise you, you will see a compound effect. You won't notice it immediately, but if you keep doing it, you'll see that you're going to improve by hundreds of percent by the end of the year if you keep doing it. And it'll help you advance. People will notice a change, and you'll be that much closer to realizing your dream. So the first one is to really be intentional. And I say that because we get so busy with life, right? That if you do not schedule time to learn something 1 hour a day, it will never get learned, right? So just like you schedule a meeting, just like you schedule to cook dinner, like you schedule to go shopping, you have to be intentional with scheduling continuous learning. So put it on your schedule, just like you do everything else. If you do not put it on your schedule, it will not happen, I assure you. People ask me all the time, how are you able to do all these different things? It's because I schedule in everything. I'm up at 4. I try to relax around 5 p.m. If you are not on my schedule, the chances are it's not going to happen. So be intentional, schedule everything. The second thing is use technology. Like I said, technology is a great tool for personal workforce development. So everybody's probably heard of ChatGPT. So whenever I want to learn something on YouTube or I want to get a list of something, I just put into ChatGPT, tell me the top 10 TEDx podcasts from last year. It pops up a whole list. I mean, we can work smarter and not harder. So the second thing for personal workforce development is to use technology. ChatGPT is one of many things that you can use, but find whatever tools are going to use to work for you and use it to develop your personal workforce development. And then the third thing is really to just keep going. I give a rule to myself to never miss 2 days. That means never miss 2 days, exercising, never miss 2 days of talking to my grandmother, never miss 2 days. It's okay if you miss 1 day, but the goal is to keep going, never miss 2 days. So if you have a schedule that you're adhering to of doing that learning 1 hour a day to learn a new skill or to learn something that's going to help you in your career or help you personally, just remember to never miss 2 days, and you'll be well on your way. So I hope that was helpful, that all of it connected together as in terms of how technology is connected to the workforce and how technology really can help you personally in your own workforce development, and what the state of Georgia really is doing and has on the ground to really target workforce development here in the state. So if you give an attorney and a politician a mic, I will keep on talking, and I really want to be open to questions because I think that's where I'm going to learn more, right? And where I can be most helpful. So I will stop talking, Corey. I'll hand it back over to you.
Okay. I don't think so. I think everyone, you can hear me? Okay, perfect. So if you have questions, you can of course raise your hand and we will acknowledge. So it's like Ayana Hopkins, you have a question?
Yes, I do. Hi, Dar'shun. Am I saying this correctly? If I'm not, I am so sorry. Is it Dar'shun?
It is. Yes.
Yes. So my question is just based on the 3 things that you provided for us for workforce development. 3 is something that I have a big issue with. So whether it's lacking motivation, just wanting to just relax, stress, things of that nature. So when you say keep going, what kind of advice would you give when you just don't feel motivated to do it at all? Like you started something, but you just can't commit for some odd reason? What advice do you have for that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I will use the question of exercising. So I make sure I get in 30 minutes of exercise every day. And really it is about finding your why. Because if you find your why, you find superhuman strength to go on even when you don't have motivation. So for me, exercising every day, even though I hate sweating, even though I hate exercising, is because I have a family history of high blood pressure and diabetes. And so my why is I am trying to break sort of that generational curse that's been handed down. And so even when I don't want to exercise, I remember why I'm doing it, which is I don't want to be on high blood pressure medication. I don't want to have to take insulin injections. And so if you remember your why, that will get you through 99% of motivation, because motivation is hard, right? You either feel it or you don't.
Yeah.
So motivation is very fleeting. You have to remember why you're doing it. And that if your why is strong enough, you won't have a problem going forward. And write your why down too. It's helpful if you can see your why as opposed to, trying to think it or make it up on the fly. If you write down your why and refer back to it, I promise you, you'll keep going.
Yes, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right, do we have any other questions?
I have one.
Okay.
So my question, I guess, is more so geared around your workforce development credit that you were talking about in rural counties. Is this for organizations or for individuals? I was just trying to wrap my head around what it would look like. Because I did, like early in my career, I worked with some workforce development offices and helping them bring those types of credits out to companies or individuals. But I was just wondering if you could share a little bit more about it.
Yeah, so this is an individual income tax credit. As long as they go through this workforce development program that's under the technology system of Georgia, then the individual can claim a $4,000 dollar for dollar tax credit on their Georgia taxes. Now that bill is slated to pass hopefully tomorrow. Tomorrow is our longest day of the session, so we'll be at the Capitol for literally 24 hours. But once that passes, the goal is to get it over to the Senate and signed by the governor, and that will be effective on July 1st, 2024.
Wow. Awesome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Don't be shy.
Someone has a question on it.
Okay,
Sulema?
you have the floor.
Morning, yes. My name is Sulema and I am located in Texas. You said that's for only Georgia, the workforce tax credit?
Yes, it's only for Georgia companies because obviously the Georgia legislature is only limited to providing tax credits for here in Georgia. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't exist on the federal level.
Okay.
So whoever your senator is, your U.S. senator is, contact them and see if there might be any federal tax credits. It's just none that I can think of right now. But the bill that I was talking about is only for Georgia residents, and it's for a tax credit on your Georgia tax returns.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Saw a question come in through the chat from Kimberly Thomas. Says, how do you balance the work life and learning goals outside of your schedule?
Good question. I actually wrote a whole book about this during the pandemic. So I don't believe there is really such a thing as balance. I believe there's such a thing as seasons. So for example, the first 3 months of the year, I'm 80% a legislator and 20% a lawyer. After the legislative session ends, that flips. I'm 80% a lawyer and about 20% of legislator. So if you think about balance, especially, from a day-to-day situation, then you can get really, really frustrated. So I try to think of, instead of my life being balance. It's just about what season that I am in. So there are going to be times where some things are going to be more of a priority than other things. For example, now, even though I'm on the line with you lovely people, I can't tell you how much legislative stuff I have to get done today, and then tomorrow I'm going to be 100% of a legislator. There's going to be no balance. I'm not going to be contacting any clients. I'm going to call my family, in between when I can, but I'm not going to spend as much time as I otherwise would with them. So balance is fleeting and frustrating. I try to look at things as what season am I in, and what do I need to prioritize? And then when the next season comes, those priorities might be totally different. You just have to figure out what is a priority where you are right now, and that might change later on. Hopefully that was helpful as opposed to confusing.
Thank you for that. Kimberly said very helpful. We also have another question from Mauricio, and that is, where do you see Georgia in 5 years economically, socially, etc.?
If I knew the question to that, I would buy a lottery ticket today. I have no idea. Politics is very fluid. It is very unpredictable. Is one of the things that frustrates me, because I'm a lawyer, so I like procedure, I like rules, I like predictability, and politics is none of that. So I could not tell you. I can tell you where I hope it is. In 5 years, I hope that we are a tech hub of the South. I know there are many state leaders that are working on that, but I hope that when I see these lists on LinkedIn about, the top tech hubs in the state, that Georgia is going to be on that list, because right now we're not. I hope that we are one of the best places to raise capital, because we have a large number of entrepreneurs here. Atlanta is the #1 city for Black-owned businesses in the country, and they have been that way for several years. We're third in women-owned businesses in the nation. We've been on that list for several years, so there's no reason why we shouldn't be on these lists. So I hope that we are at a place where we are attracting capital, attracting technology, and more Fortune 500 companies. I also hope it's a place where everyone can live, work, and play, and have the freedom to do all those things. So I have big dreams for Georgia, but as I said before, politics is very, very unpredictable. I passed a bill yesterday on the floor of the House that I had no idea that I was going to pass. And so that just underscores to you how even me serving in the House, from day to day, I have no idea what's going to happen. I just try to do my best, and we see what happens.
Good. Thank you for that. One of the questions I had specifically was around the three-part, I think, conversation around AI that was done. So I wanted to get your insights to what you gained from those conversations, having, several different, community leaders, community members, some people from the state and the federal government come down to speak about it. What was your full take after all the conversation was said about AI and its, beneficial use within the state, as well as with things we may need to continue to watch around, like, say, education, which was, I know, one of the topics that came up as well?
Yeah, well, the #1 thing that I got is AI is more complicated than you ever could imagine. And a lot of this is centered around not even Democrat really and Republican. It really is about the difference between sort of how far do you allow technology to get invasive into the human space, and how much do you allow the human space to push back on any invasive things that AI can do. And so I found that there were various opinions about the role of specifically generative AI. and also about the different layers and who should be in charge. Should it be the federal government that is dictating? Should it be state governments that have that control? Should it be about who it is that maybe outside corporations, should they have more of the say so? So I walked away thinking that I knew what generative AI, one, was, and two, what the scope of the issues were. And the more I got into this AI subcommittee and definitely into this legislation that we just passed, the more I realized how much I did not know. And I'm in this space, right? So if I found out a lot of things about what I did not know, just imagine how my colleagues who are not working on an AI bill, how much they don't know. And so I think going forward for the state of Georgia is going to be crucial that we get people in the room who do this work, who use this technology, who develop this technology, who really understand it. Because I will tell you, some of the worst bills happen when legislators think they know better than people who are actually doing this on a daily basis. That's when the worst legislation happens, when we think we know it all and we know nothing. That was a long answer to your question, but that was sort of the biggest issue thing that I learned, was that I don't know anything. And then the second thing is that I learned is that AI is moving at a speed that the government we're already behind. The government typically is 10 years behind technology anyway, but if we don't start to get a handle on this, our generative AI is going to bypass any capacity that the government is going to have to really control the narrative and to protect privacy and data and things like that. So the second thing I learned is that we are way behind the 8 ball. So those are the two things that I learned. Probably the third thing that I learned is that there's so many good uses for generative AI. And so trying to highlight that, because I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? I don't want to regulate generative AI and totally crush the innovation behind it, because I want innovative companies and innovative minds. And so I was able to learn a lot more about the uses of generative AI and what it could do. And I try to promote those good things to my colleagues so that we can find that balance coming up with good legislation that is not going to stifle innovation, but is also going to protect the privacy and the data of those we have taken a sworn oath to protect here in Georgia.
Perfect, thank you. One item that came up, and Tawana, I'll give you the floor after. Somebody asked, what was the actual name of your book that focused on like balance and seasoning?
Oh, it's called Morning to Motivation. So you can find it on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, other retailers. I wrote it during the pandemic because I was stuck inside like most of you. And I'm in the house by myself. I'm a single woman, so I just have a dog. And I thought, what could I do to really inspire the world at this time? And so it's a whole book full of inspiration about careers and life and my background and, my hopes and dreams. So I hope you enjoy.
Thank you. Tawana?
Hi, Dar'shun. This is Tawana. So first of all, thank you for sharing all of this amazing information. From where I'm sitting, it seemed like you from the day you were born, you had it all put together. So if you go back to 21, what would you tell your 21-year-old self? Did you have any life lessons, things that you might do just a little bit differently?
Oh, absolutely. I have a lot of things I would do differently, but probably at the top of the list is I would have realized the power of community. So I was raised by two parents, but they were both entrepreneurs, right? And so they just had that sort of go-getter attitude first. But my mom specifically, I'm the firstborn of 3 children, specifically taught me to be very, very independent, right? She was like, if you don't get it done, nobody's going to get it done. And I think I internalized that to the extreme. And so whenever I wanted to do something, I did it alone. If I wanted to do X, Y, and Z, I didn't wait on anybody. I did it alone. And the older that I got, the more I realized the power of networking. So getting outside, sort of my dorm room. Nobody's surprised, but I was on student government and eventually becoming student body president, and I was a resident assistant, but I never did like social stuff. So if somebody asked me, to go out, I wasn't really a go out person. I was introverted, so I didn't really go out. And I realized, particularly now, how powerful it is to create those social bonds outside of academic or professional. And I know sometimes, particularly in corporate environments, you're like, I just want to go and get my job done, and I don't really want to hang out with y'all, right? I see y'all all day. I don't really want to hang out with y'all, and I get it, right? But at the end of the day, really having those conversations outside of a work environment is really where the trust starts to develop, where the connections start to get deeper. And I'm not saying everybody has to be your friend, but making sure that you create those spaces outside of your normal work environment has proved golden to me. One of the reasons why I was able to pass a bill yesterday is because I have conversations with people outside of being a legislator on the other side of the aisle. And we don't talk work, we talk about family. We talk about our day jobs. We talk about, things that are on the news. And really honing in on how important community is something. As a 21-year-old, I would have done a lot more community building as opposed to thinking that I can do it on my own. Yes, I did do a lot of stuff on my own, but think about how much that would have multiplied had I done it as a 21-year-old, where I would be right now. I started a millionaire mastermind group 2 years ago. Of course I did. So we meet every week with the goal of everybody in the group becoming a millionaire, right? And the power that we have obtained by the 5 of us over the last 2 years pouring into each other is phenomenal. There is a book that I wish everybody would read. It's from Napoleon Hill, which you might have heard of his book, Think and Grow Rich. But that's not the book I'm going to tell you to read. The book that I think is underrated from Napoleon Hill is called Outwitting the Devil. It's called Outwitting the Devil. And it's a book where Napoleon Hill is having an imaginary, or maybe he's having a real conversation with the devil. And he's talking about how do you keep people from attaining their life purpose? How do you keep people from their dreams? It is a fascinating book. I read it every year, and every year it spurs me to do great things. But in Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich, he talks about the power of masterminds, going back to community. You're the average of the 5 people that you hang around the most. So you look at your circle, and that's who you are. You might not want to admit it. You might think there's not outside influences, but subconsciously you are the average of the 5 people you hang around the most. And so I want to be a millionaire. So what do? I hang around 5 millionaires every day via text message, and every week when we do our weekly meetups. And so if I had one thing to tell you all to do, is to not underestimate the power of your community and not try to do it on your own. You 10x the power you already have when you bring other people along. I know that was a long explanation, but that was the perfect question because I was waiting to tell somebody.
Well, then I have a follow-up to that, Dar'shun, because I actually have the same issue. When I was in college, I wish that I would have stayed in contact with a lot of my, the folks that I went to college with, because some of them end up going into finance, some of them went into, law school, medical school. And so it'd just be great to have that connection. So for some of the people on the phone, there may be a lot of introverts. So do you have sort of like a starter advice for them to just get started on building community here in the company?
Yeah, so and if you're an introvert like me, hopefully this resonates with you. Nobody believes I'm an introvert, but I had to work it. I had to be intentional, like I was telling you before, about making sure that I personally develop myself. And it was hard, but it has paid out. So you have to be intentional about, trying to expand your community and network. So one of the things that I did to do this is to start with people that I'm already comfortable with, right? So, I have one best friend. That's all I need. I have one best friend, right? And that best friend compliments me because she's not an introvert like me. And so she will intentionally, because I've asked her to, invite me to places where there are people that I don't know. Get me outside of my comfort zone a little bit. And what ends up happening is it's sort of the best of both worlds. I can continue to have a little bit of security because there's somebody there that I know, but then she introduces me to somebody that I do not know. And I try as much as possible when I'm meeting new people to find common ground, because that's my safe space. I don't like arguing, believe it or not, even though I'm an attorney, even though I'm a politician. I like finding common ground, because when we find that common ground, the conversation just gets easy. It just gets easy. We bond, we create this trust and rapport, and it's so much easier when you find that common ground. So for me, that has personally worked. Is I use essentially, I guess, an anchor to get me outside of my comfort zone and to introduce me to new people. And then as soon as I can find some common ground with someone else, it becomes so easy, and I'm off to the races, and I get to share my passion. They get to share theirs because we found common ground. And it really is just magic once you start to do that. So I would say start with your circle, get your circle, tell your circle, your trusted circle, what it is that you're trying to do, and then be intentional about it. Say, invite me to X, Y, and Z. Could you introduce me to X, Y, and Z? Could you do this? Because if you're not intentional with anything in life, it just won't happen. Life just happens. So you have to be very intentional.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Scrolling through. I don't see any additional raised hands. Do we have any additional questions in the room? Okay. Well, if any questions,
There's a question.
it says, what podcast are you listening to? That's from Jamal Brown.
Oh goodness. So I am listening to this podcast called No Stupid Questions. If you've read the book Freakonomics, this is the author of Freakonomics does a podcast with a psychologist. Before I decided I wanted to become a lawyer, I wanted to be a psychologist because I thought human behavior is fascinating to me. It's just fascinating. And eventually, obviously, I went and got a law degree. But what No Stupid Questions, the podcast does is it takes questions like one of the podcasts was on why do corporations or some corporations tend to hire people who are extroverted, and sort of they go behind the data of that, and eventually what they came up to as a conclusion is that introverts run the world, and they provide sort of some statistical data behind the power of being an introvert. And so there's the psychologist that's on the podcast, there's the author of Freakonomics, and they just have this back and forth conversation. They'll have, they have data behind it, right? So it's not them just talking, there's actually data behind it, psychology data behind it. And it's a fascinating podcast. It comes on weekly. I think you can probably get it on Google Podcasts or wherever you get your podcast. But it's just a fascinating podcast to me. The other one that I will recommend, and he's rich enough, so you can follow him if you want, but I do like his podcast, even though he's filthy rich, is the author of The Compound Effect, which is a great book. Compound Effect is a great book. It's right behind Outwitting the Devil that I read every year, but it is Darren Hardy is his name, and the name of his podcast is Darren Daily. So I listen to it every morning. It's about 7 to 10 minutes while I'm fixing my coffee. And essentially, it teaches you personal development leadership lessons every day. I think today's podcast underscore what I said about introverts. He's an introvert, and he talks about how most millionaires that you think about, if you really study their behavior, they're introverts, because introverts don't like to hear themselves talk, right? They're very laid back. They like to listen and learn as opposed to always speaking. Even though you think they're antisocial, they're just thinking about their responses and how they interact with people. It doesn't mean they're antisocial. They're just very careful about how they present to people and what they say. They want it to be meaningful. So those are the two podcasts that I love to listen to. No Stupid Questions and Darren Daily.
Thank you. All right, group, any questions? Up here we go. What is the biggest challenge in your career?
Wow. The biggest challenge in my career, probably is not, is trying to focus on doing one thing. So for people who are high achievers, like all of you on this call, you might can relate to this. I want to do everything. Like, people will come to me with an idea and I'm like, that's a great idea, let's do it, right? But I can't do everything. It's only 24 hours in the day. The difference between me and Oprah is, she gets more value per hour than I do, but we both get the same amount of time. You cannot make more time. You can print more money, you cannot print more time. And so for me, I have to say no to a lot of things that I want to do. And I get approached a lot about either speaking opportunities or helping with this initiative or that initiative. And I have to say no a lot. As a matter of fact, I did a talk to a group of women, and my topic was on the power of no. And what I tell women all the time, particularly, is that no is a complete sentence, right? And until you convince me to say yes, my default answer is always going to be no. Why? Because I just have limited time. So until you convince me to say yes, my default is a no. And depending on the circumstance, no is a complete sentence. So we tend to want to explain why we say no and stuff like that. I am very quick, depending on, my relationship. If somebody asks me to do something, no. And I leave it at that. No explanation, no, but maybe I can do this and do that. It's a no. And that is probably one of the most powerful words in my vocabulary, is no, period. So that's the biggest challenge, is saying no when I really wish I could do it. But I can't make more time. I can make more money in theory, but I can't make more time. I have a limited time here. We all do. And so prioritizing what we say yes to, because when you say yes to something, you have to say no to something else. It's just a matter of 24 hours in a day, right? And so I have to be very intentional about what I say yes to. So, saying no to a lot of things is probably my biggest challenge. Not to say it, but I wanted to say yes, but unfortunately I just couldn't.
Okay. I definitely thank you for saying yes today. Still have a few minutes if anyone has any additional questions. If you do not want to state your question now, you can definitely send it to me and I will coordinate those answers when Dar'shun has time to complete those. But I do want to go around one more time, see if anyone else has a question.
I do.
Okay. You have the floor.
All right. Very good presentation. Everything you talked about today has definitely helped me with things that I want to do in my life. I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I've always ended up working for a corporation. So, but my question with politics, like everything that's going on in Georgia, the Fannie Willis case. So my question is about personal life. Like, where do you draw the line with your personal life? And is that a part of your purpose and your why? So how do you keep the balance there? And, that's my question.
Yeah, and that's a good question. So, every elected official is different. For me, I share enough of my personal life just so enough for people to know that I'm approachable. Because I never want to be that politician that people think is unapproachable, that I'm not going through, life issues that people can't relate to. So you will see me post a lot about my 15-year-old niece and the financial lessons that I teach her. We just went on a college tour this past Friday, so I posted some pictures on social media about that. When I did have a boyfriend, I posted a few pictures about date nights or things like that. So like I said, every politician is different. So you'll have some politicians who won't post anything, and then you'll have some that overpost. I try to find a balance between people knowing that I'm a serious legislator and I can get stuff done, but also making it so that people know that they can contact me, right? That I am not so powerful or whatever that people can't reach out to me. And that's important to me just because of my background. I never wanted to be that person that treated my parents the way that they were treated at times because they got a little bit of power or position or money, and all of a sudden you couldn't approach them. So as you can see, a lot of who I am today comes from my parents. I hit the parent lottery. I tell them this all the time. I will fight you over my parents. I grew up in Decatur. So I am willing and open to tell you that my parents are some of the biggest blessings that I ever could receive. I really did hit the parent jackpot. And really the reason that I am who I am is because of my parents. They sowed seeds that I am now getting the benefit of.
Yeah, you have a beautiful spirit, by the way. So thank you for sharing.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay. All right, guys, I think I'm going to call it. Well, just when I say that, see another hand. So, Katrina, you have the floor.
Hi, Dar'shun. Thank you. Today's been really very, very insightful. Appreciate it. I might have missed this, but are you an only child?
I'm not. I'm the only daughter. I'm the oldest grandchild and the oldest child. I have two younger brothers, but if you ask me on any given day, I will say I'm an only child. But I do have two younger brothers.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the answer.
Yeah.
All right, thank you for that. All right, so with that, I'm going to call it today. Like I said, if you have any additional questions, you can filter those through me by email, and then I will get those placed in the proper hands. Other than that, I want to thank you, Dar'shun, for coming to speak with us today. It was definitely a great experience. Thank you for all the knowledge, the books, the podcasts, and everything else that you enlightened our associates on. And then normally we would, of course, provide you a gift in person, but since you're virtual, I will bring that to you. Just a small token of our thanks for you providing this insight and coming and speaking with us today. So again, thank you so much.
Thank you. Everybody have a great rest of the day. And please follow me on social media. I do respond back. It might take me a while, but I do respond back to messages. So thank you so much, Corey, and thank you so much to everyone for attending.
All right, you have a great day.
You too. Bye.